Zavier Betts steps away from the Nebraska football program. Who's up next?
You are Locked On Huskers, your daily podcast on the Nebraska Cornhuskers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey gang, GP here, Locked On Huskers. Thank you for making Locked On Huskers your first watch and listen each and every single day. Go Big Red Nation. Appreciate you. Like the fact that you hang out with us. Mark Onweiler, before we go forward, let them know about LinkedIn.
Thank you, DP. This episode of Locked On Huskers is brought to you by LinkedIn. Now, these days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. It's super easy to do. If you are watching this on a computer or on your phone, your computer skills are good enough to create a LinkedIn Jobs posting. You add your job and then the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you are hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. And as you know, making that right hire makes all the difference. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. Now, LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. DP, back to you.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it. Lots to go over this episode, and we will start and focus on the receiver room because Zavier Betts makes the announcement to Matt Rhule, who then announces to the media that Zavier Betts is stepping away from the Nebraska football program. Stop me if you've heard this before. It is a real thing, and it exists. Again, I thank you for making Locked On the first watch and listen each and every single day. If you haven't subscribed, please hit the pause button. I won't give you any more content until you unpause, but click the button, the subscribe button, get that there. If you have comments for me, put them down in the comment section. Greatly appreciate it. Matter of fact, questions, suggestions, or otherwise. What this does for the wide receiver room is important. What the plans were for the wide receiver room are important. And then ultimately things to look for going forward. Those are some of the things that we will cover in the course of this episode. Again, we can't be surprised that Zavier Betts steps away from the Nebraska football program. We have recent history that speaks to that and steps to that. The reasons behind it, and when a young person tells you, I simply am not built for it, I do not have the heart for it, I do not feel it in my bones and in my blood, it is good for everybody involved to step away and separate and say, okay, young man, if this is not for you, if this football thing is not for you, then go and find your path. That's what good leadership would be. This is what good administrators and mentors in the program would speak to. Okay, young man, this is not for you. That does not take away a couple of things. One, it happened before. What we know of people is what we accept of people, not what they say, but what they do. And history matters. So there were signs. There were always signs. And I'm not sure that folks were completely bought in within the program that Zavier Betts was there, but you hope. And then you work accordingly. Now, here's issue one. One, we want wellness for Zavier Betts. We want him happy. We want him healthy. We want him to find his path. As the quote says, once a Husker, always a Husker. And being a kid from Nebraska certainly plays into that. But on the other side of it, we wish him well in whatever he's doing, whether he's going to stay in school, whether he's not going to stay in school. I don't know. We'll let it play out. I don't need to prognosticate about what's next for Zavier Betts. Don't want to do that. Let that young man speak for himself in his own space. What happens from that is that there has been an accumulation of resources spent on Zavier Betts. There's a scholarship in play. Again, all of the offseason work, all of the class time, the drills, the development and such, all of that's in play. And it has just been flushed down the drain. You no longer have all of the work and all of the assets of what you put into Zavier Betts as a part of your program as you walk 17 days ahead to beat Minnesota. And the reality is, after the lightning strike, and that's what it is. It's a lightning strike. It's almost, I wouldn't call it a gut punch, but a lightning strike where you kind of stand on in and go, wow, that really just happened. A player that I think it's fair to say was being counted on for production in several ways. We spoke on this podcast about his ability to return kicks and whether he would be in the play for punt returns, and then what he could do on the field and running jet sweeps and getting the ball in his hands early. His explosion at the end of his last active season at Nebraska, and his ability to make plays and then finish plays. That's a big deal. It's a big deal under any regime in college football, let alone a Big Ten team, let alone Nebraska, let alone a Nebraska team with a new coach and a new roster. So Nebraska will tighten the belt, and they will straighten the back, and then they will make decisions going forward over what this means. What does the loss of Zavier Betts mean to Nebraska football and its offense? Well, there's been some work between Jeff Sims and Zavier Betts, and all of that's there. It's gone now. This is work put in. These are reps that you do not get back. These are reps that could have gone to other young players. And there's a young receivers group behind Zavier Betts that now will be thrust into the higher repetition space. But every rep that Zavier Betts took to this point has lesser value now than it did. Good for the quarterbacks who threw to him. Good for the timing of the other receivers. But you no longer have that intel and those reps under your belt. So now what? What happens now? And we were not locked on what we thought the receiver room was going to look like and work like with Zavier Betts. With Zavier Betts, we kind of penciled him in the top 4 of receivers. Some days he's receiver 2, some days he's receiver 4. I don't think he ever really went beyond that. But what for Nebraska receivers? And we heard from Garrett McGuire. We heard from Marcus Satterfield, and we will find out over the course of days. But we're 17 days away. 17 days. So there's a lot to talk about here, a lot of meat and potatoes to dig, to put your fork in. We will do that when we come back. I just want to point out here, as we go through this, Betts' place in the room was solid, and now a vacuum exists, a hole exists in what you had planned to do and the work that was being done. We'll get some quotes from Garrett McGuire, Marcus Satterfield, and we'll talk about the wide receiver room when we come back to Locked On Huskers. Thanks, gang. Appreciate you hanging out with us for Locked On Huskers. Again, I'm DP, Lincoln America. Boop, boop, over here. If you have not subscribed, please do. That way you get the content. And again, this is a long ride, 17 days. We will I think we're going to get you 15 more shows over the course of the next 17 days. So that's a lot of work, but that's okay. We're here. We're built for it. And Mark and I will get you through it. We were talking about Zavier Betts in the wide receiver room. And some of what we were dealing with was the known versus the unknown. We saw Marcus Washington for the entirety of last season as receiver 2 for Casey Thompson behind Trey Palmer for the Huskers after 31 catches. So we saw some pop, some flash, and we have his history to go from. So we know bona fide quantitative receiver in the Big Ten Conference. We know he will be able to produce, should be able to produce, and doing the things that he does well. Then in a situation similar to Zavier Betts was Isaiah Garcia-Castaneda, who was a part of the team a year ago, scored a touchdown in game one, and then sort of vanished, faded, and then stepped away. He returns. Change of body, change of work, all the things that we said about Zavier Betts, but this is a veteran receiver. I'm not sure. I'm not going to try to pencil in the top 3 receivers in any sort of usage vacuum. I don't want to do that. I do want to paint the picture about what the coordinator and the receiver coach talked about. It is an opportunity. Look, the receiver room is a young room. And in that room, leadership is required. Somebody that knows how to be on time and handle the operations and can lead them in how to handle schoolwork, the social anxiety, the social media responsibilities, the booster responsibilities, the at-home community responsibilities of, hey, man, you don't get to walk away from the friends that you went to high school with. They still expect for you to have time for them, make time for them, and be around them. And you need somebody to simply say and whisper, hey, it's okay. It's okay. That's Isaiah Garcia-Castaneda. That's Marcus Washington. And then it's Billy Kemp IV, who, in having the box checked and getting the single-digit jersey, a statement was made that young Billy Kemp IV has been leading the group by example. Not only just the verbal, hey, let me say the right thing, get you in the right place, that sort of deal, but in the actual work being done. Again, a 70 catch season, a 60 catch season, at over 131 catches in his career. That's a big deal, and done in a big circle. Like he did this in the ACC. He and Jeff Sims have reps at the ACC. That means, okay, big time football is not foreign to them. They know how to plan. They know how to take care of their bodies. They know what nutrition works. They know how to balance the academic and the athletic. They know how to balance the social, the introspective, the first thing first, the self-care. They know how to deal with these things. But my eyes kind of popped a bit today when we were told that Billy Kemp IV has put on 17 pounds of grown man muscle since he's been here on campus in Lincoln, Nebraska. And they're happy with the 17 pounds. It's the right 17 pounds. It's okay. Is he going to be able to withstand the wear and tear of catching passes down the seam and underneath linebackers? And those linebackers can be ornery folks as a wee wide receiver crosses. Quite frankly, there's a whole lot of bump and run going on, and he'll have to take it. And he'll have to take the beating and punishment. He also can run the reverse. He also can get off the slot. He can run the option routes in there. But the catch and finish work in the Big Ten Conference is a different kind of work. It's violent. It's defensive. And he's not the biggest, even with plus 17 pounds, he's still not the biggest receiver in the conference. We can flip to the other side because some names were mentioned, and I found it interesting that Bryson Jeremiah, plus Lloyd and Doss were mentioned. Malachi Coleman was mentioned. Of course, not Husker names. Husker folks, their eyes pop open a little bit when you mention Malachi Coleman and saying that he had a good day. Now, we know that as a top-level receipt with all of the intangible boxes that you can check, and then the physical boxes are all checked. But there's that feeling that you don't want to throw your babies in with sharks just because. Malachi has to develop. He has to form. If Doss is going to give you work, Lloyd is going to give you work, I'm impressed by that. But it also speaks to Nebraska's need offensively, that if they're going to throw the ball, and I have a sneaky suspicion this is a run-first team. I think that the ground game is important, which means, you need receivers who can push defensive backs around. But two, that when you do call on these receivers to get into routes and get open and get finished and move the chains, that they're able to, and they have some record and history for it. Marcus Washington, Billy Kemp, they have the resume for that. Billy Kemp has been, we're told, he's been putting in work in the run game, getting better, stronger, more sound at setting boundaries for the running game, getting inside, head in the right place, hands in the right place, footwork good. Okay, now can I repeat that? Can I move him to the other side? Different defender, different reach. One time he's taking on a defensive end. The next time he's taking on a linebacker. Next time he's taking on a safety coming downhill. Or it could be a corner that's got his hands on him. And Billy Kemp he's been putting the work. Those are the reports. But if Lloyd and Doss are going to be expected, if Malachi Coleman is going to be expected to put in work, I think we can start to wrap our brains on this. Nebraska, Marcus Satterfield, Garrett McGuire are going to have to use the talent of the players based on down and distance. You're not going to be able to run everything with Malachi that you can run with Billy, that you can run with Doss. It's not how this works. So there'll be some telltale signs. You'll run different. You may decide, hey, I'm going to put Malachi out there. I'm going to let him get vertical, see if we can get a win, create a mismatch on the backside, or can I put Billy Kemp in the slot inside of Malachi? What happens with the defenses if I do that? Now the chess pieces are starting to be moved. One big chess piece is now off the board. Zavier Betts is off the board. But you now know that I've got 3 veteran receivers that I can count on. And then I've got a full stable of young Mustangs who are just bursting at the opportunity. Just can't wait to get a chance to get out there and stretch the legs and get long in catching passes for Nebraska. We will see. That's what all this camp is for. We'll throw it a break. When we come back, I want to talk a couple of quotes that we got from a couple of things that Garrett McGuire and Marcus Satterfield were talking about. We'll talk about them when we come back to Locked On Huskers. Hey, gang, DP here, Locked On Huskers, and I want to thank you once again for those of you who have subscribed. Thank you. If you're about to subscribe, thank you very much. Please do so. Greatly appreciate it. You can put your comments down in the comment sections if there's something you want me to get to in the course of the next few episodes. RDV. There are generally 3 letters that are used substantially in Nebraska when it comes to football. GBR. There's another 3 that's making an effort to become a regular thing with Nebraska football fans. RDB. Relentless, disruptive, and violent. And that is not just an offensive thing or defensive thing. That's also an offensive thing. And that is the plan of attack for blocking, run game blocking for Nebraska. Important that those letters, RDV, being pushed about and bandied about and shared, where they're telling receivers, listen, you're going to have to be physical on the edge. You're going to have to set lanes. You're going to have to be violent in how you block and explode and do the work. It's been consistent to hear these words being bandied about and have these letters thrown out. RDV. It's important to know that if Nebraska, again, down a receiver and slightly still uncomfortable about Eric Gilbert and whether he's going to be allowed to get the exclusion to play or not, and then what that means for the tight end position. But what Satterfield and McGuire talked about was opportunity. Great opportunity for the youth, for the young players in this receiving group. Great opportunities. And if they're willing to put in the work and get in the reps and use those reps for good, because there's one thing to get reps. It's something entirely different to get good use of those reps and then good production in those reps. Nebraska's coaching staff, they have their hands full. But they like the opportunity. It's an opportunity for the coaches to get better, for them to develop in a unique situation. As I said, Matt Rhule says he kind of loves chaos in that situation. So when fires break out, you have to figure out whether you can put them out, whether you're going to get excited or whether you're going to calm down. All of those things are in play. And the things that they've talked about is the opportunity. They said they need to maximize the talent of the individual players, to maximize the talent of the individual players. And that's big, because that at least tells me that, you can use Malachi Coleman for what he's good at. You can use Doss for what he's good at. You can use Lloyd for what he's good at, rather than putting them out there and asking them all to be lead blockers on the edge and boundary setters and bangers from the outside. No. You can alternate and run them in and run them out. It'll be interesting to see, but that's why camp exists. 17 days to work out all of these answers for all these questions. Work them out. Figure out who you are, who you're going to be, and then how you're going to get there. Zavier Betts leaving the program is a big deal. How they respond to it, how the Huskers respond to it, is a much bigger deal. They can get it right. I hope they get it right. That's it for me in this episode of Locked On Huskers. Thank you for making Locked On Huskers your first watch and listen each and every single day. Come back tomorrow, because we're going to talk a little bit more about beating Minnesota and what's required. All of those things are in play. We'll close with the 3 words that we love so much. Go Big Red.